Hello, this is Spellsquires MTG. Today we have two games for you in our 5th episode of Sporefrog Shenanigans. In our first game, we have Intet the Dreamer, Dragon Tribal, versus Meren of Clan Toth, and then by Alec, we have Chulane, Teller of Tales, Creature Tribal. So let's get on with the game. I untap, draw, and play a Frontier Bivouac and pass. Alec plays a Mosswort Bridge. Alec keeps a card, then passes. Draws. Plays a Forest, then passes. I untap, draw. I play a Mountain. I cast Rampant Growth and pass a turn whilst I'm searching. Alec untaps and draws. Plays an Island and taps it for Soul Ring. Then taps 2 to cast an Incubation Druid. And I find a Forest with my Rampant Growth. Jack plays a Swamp, taps 2 to cast Farseek, and then passes. He finds a Swamp and puts it on the battlefield tapped. I untap and draw. I cast 3 visits, going to find a Forest. I then play a Izzet Boilerworks, bouncing a Forest to my hand and pass the turn. Alec untaps and draws. I find a Ketra Triome with the 3 visits. Alec plays a Forest. He plays Garruk Primal Hunter, pluses up to make a beast and then passes. Jack untaps and draws. He taps 1 to cast a Soul Ring, then pays 4 to cast Meren, and passes. I untap, draw for turn. I play a Cinderglade, enters untapped, and I cast Intet. Alec untaps and draws. He taps 5 to put 3 counters on Incubation Druid, meaning it can tap for 3 mana now. He then casts an Evolution Sage and passes. And in the meantime, he pluses up Garruk to make another beast. Jack taps and draws. He taps 2 to cast Secure, sacrifices it. He searches for a Forest and puts on the battlefield tapped. Jack passes. I untap and draw. I play an Exotic Orchard. I pay 4 to cast Bear Umbra. And Jack remembers to return Secure Tribe back to his hand with Meren. I then roll a dice to decide who my commander attacks. And I attack Alec for 8. And I untap all my lands because of Bear Umbra. Alec takes 8. I then pay 7 to cast Nullspine Dragon, choosing Alec, meaning I discard my hand and draw 8 cards because I dealt 8 damage to Alec this turn. I discard 3, draw 8, and then pass the turn. Alec untaps and draws. Alec activates Mosswort Bridge to cast Allosaurus Shepherd, Rich Boy. Jack announces he wants the Allosaurus Shepherd dead. Alec then casts Reclamation Sage, destroying my Bear Umbra, which I find incredibly rude. Alec downticks Garruk. Alec draws 3 with Garruk's second ability. Alec passes. Jack untaps and draws. He taps 4 to cast Solemn Simulacrum. He taps 2 to recast Secure Tribe, sacks it, gets an experience counter from Meren, and goes to find basic. Jack passes, I untap and draw. I play a Command Tower. I cast a Skyshroud Claim. I find 2 normal forests with Skyshroud Claim. I attack Jack for 6 and Garruk for 7. I pay 3 to activate Intet's triggered ability, exiling top card of my library. I can play it without paying its mana cost. I then cast an Explore, drawing a card. I play an extra land, which is an unclaimed territory, naming Dragon. I pay 4 to cast Clever Impersonator, copying Nullspine Dragon, selecting Jack. I discard my hand and draw 6. I then pass. Alec untaps and draws. Alec casts Finale of Devastation for 6. Jack then sacrifices Cure Tribe to go and find a Swamp. Alec then finds a creature CMC 6 or less from his graveyard or his library and puts it into play. Alec then finds a Seedborn Muse with Finale of Devastation. Alec complains about not having any white mana. He then passes. Jack and Alec untap. Jack taps 5 to play Mazarek Cruel Death Priest. Jack then taps 5 to cast Mycoloth. Sacrificing Solemn Simulacrum, he draws a card. Meren gets an experience counter. And his Mycoloth gets 3 counters. Meren gets 1, and so does Mazarek. Jack then sacrifices Secure Tribe, and everything else gets another counter from Mazarek. Jack moves to end step and returns Secure Tribe to the battlefield with Meren's ability. He sacks it to go and find a Forest, then passes. I then whisper to Alec to get rid of the Mycoloth. Jack then passes. I untap and draw. I attack Jack for 13, and Alec for 7, and they both have no blocks, so they take the damage. I then activate Intet to exile the top card. I pay 3 to cast Beast Within on Mycoloth. Mycoloth dies and Jack gets a 3/3 beast. I then cast Quasi-Duplicate targeting a Nullspine Dragon, choosing Jack, discarding my hand and drawing 13. I pass and discard a load of cards. Alec untaps and draws. He plays a land. A Thornwood falls and gains a life. And Proliferate. Alec plays an Undergrowth Champion. He floats a colourless after tapping 4 for it. He adds 3 green to it. He adds 2 to cast Eternal Witness. He then returns a Fly of Devastation to his hand. He then plays a Land Elf. Alec passes, Jack untaps and draws. Jack pays 5 to cast Gary. We both lose 4, and Jack gains 8. Jack then casts Fierce Empath, searching his library for a card of CMC 6 or greater. Jack finds Avenger of Zendikar and puts it into his hand. Jack pays 3 to cast Skullwider, tasking Alec. Alec returns Garrett, and Jack returns. I can't see. At the end step, Jack then returns Michaeloth, sacrificing 3 creatures, giving it 6+1/+1 counters. And because of Mazarek, everything else gets 3+1/+1 counters. On top of that, Jack passes, I untap and draw for turn. I tap 7 to cast a Tarka World Render, meaning all my dragons have double strike. I attack Alec for 28, and I send 26 at Jack. Alec has no blockers, and dies miserably. Jack blocks with Mazarek, and the creatures trade, and Jack takes 12. And I cast Relentless Assault, getting another combat step, and I attack Jack again, killing him. Right, we're done with the first game. I won. I got very lucky in that game because no one really could interact with a lot of my dragons. Alec didn't draw any white. Jack got off to a pretty good start. Didn't draw a board wipe to deal with my large flyers. So let's get on to the second game, where I am playing Omnath, Locus of Creation. Alec is playing Chulane, and Jack is playing Niv Mizzet. Let's get on with it. Alec cycles Ash Barons. After playing a Azorius Chancery, then passes. I untap and draw. I play a Mirror Landscape, tap and pass. Jack draws for turn. Plays a Training Centre. Enters untap because he has 2 or more opponents. Alec untaps and draws. Alec plays a Nubalia tapped, scries 1, and bottoms the card. Alec passes. I untap, draw for turn. Then I play a Breeding Pool, taps and pass. Jack untaps, draws. He plays a Command Tower. Then he passes. Alec untaps, draws for turn. He plays Forest. Then pays 2 for Rest in Peace. Then he passes. I untap, draw for turn. I play a Forest. I then sacrifice my Mirror Landscape, and because of Rest in Peace, he gets exiled. And I find 2 mountains. Jack untaps and draws, and he plays a mountain. He pays 3 for Midnight Clock. Passes. Alec untaps and draws. Jack puts a counter on Midnight Clock in Alec's upkeep. Alec plays an Evolution Stage, then passes. Then on my upkeep, Midnight Clock triggers again, and Jack gets another counter on it. I untap and draw, and I play a Plains. I pay 4 to cast Omnath, and I draw a card. At the end of turn, I discard a Stancia Sanctuary, and I pass turn. Jack untaps and draws. Midnight Clock gets another counter. Jack plays a mountain, then pays 2 to cast Desperate Ritual, adding 3 red. Then pays 5 to cast Devil's Play, targeting Omnath. And then Omnath dies. Alec untaps, Midnight Clock triggers, and it gets another counter. Alec draws. He plays a land, and proliferates Jack's Midnight Clock. Then taps 5 to cast his commander, and passes to me. I play Mystic Monastery for turn, and I pass. Jack untaps and draws. He plays a land, then pays 6 to cast his commander, and passes. Alec untaps, draws. Jack gets another counter on Midnight Clock. Alec plays a land and proliferates a clock. Alec taps 6 to cast an Ovenwald Hydra. He draws a card from Chulane, but doesn't have a land to put into play. And then goes to find a land with Ovenwald Hydra. Alec then finds a Azorius Chancery, bouncing a land to his hand, and proliferates Jack's Midnight Clock again, which I personally think was a very bad idea. Alec passes, and on the end step, I cast Rolling Regrowth, sacrificing a land and going to find 2 basics. I find an island and a forest. I untap and draw for turn. I played an Amaria Shepherd. I play a Jund Panorama. I get a bird token, and I cast Rampant Growth. I also sacrifice my Jund Panorama to get another land, and I get 3 birds in total. Jack untaps and draws for turn, and Midnight Clock gets another counter. And because it's on 12, it sacrifices itself, and he shuffles his hand and library together and draws 7. And Jack destroys all my flyers with Midnight Clock. After that, Jack then casts Tandem Lookout, pairing of Niv Mizzet. Jack then draws his whole library to kill both of us. Jack has exactly enough to kill both of us, and we both lose the game to Niv Mizzet. So overall, that game, I thought, was very quick, 15 minutes. I definitely think Alex should not have proliferated those Midnight Clock counters, because then Jack wouldn't have drawn into the Tandem Lookout to combo out on us on turn 6. If he had just left it alone, Jack definitely wouldn't have comboed off and killed us that early on. My Omnath deck didn't get off to a particularly great start. I got focused, because that deck does go off very quickly, so that's why my commander got removed, and all of my flyers got pinged down by Niv Mizzet that early on. So overall, I think Alec definitely made a big misplay there. I think that'll be all for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.